Here's a fully fleshed out, drama-forward expansion that keeps your beats intact and pushes them into a high-stakes GH arc. Michael knows his alibi can't stand on its own, and that clarity sharpens every decision he makes. He doesn't need something splashy, he needs something airtight, something that can withstand timelines, surveillance pings, and a prosecutor who lives to pull threads. That's where Jacinda comes in, not as an accessory but as a co-architect. She agrees to the pivot with the cool precision of someone who's survived chaos before. A fake romance to anchor the narrative, a strategic job swap to place her exactly where she needs to be in Michael's orbit when the key timestamp hits, and a social media breadcrumb trail to retroactively build the how we met, how we clicked, how we became inseparable storyline. The selfie is their opening move, not the checkmate. It's a soft launch, the kind that invites people to fill in blanks with their own assumptions. Then comes the kiss, unscripted in its spark, staged in its timing, their private treaty that, "We're doing this," and, "We're not flinching." And because Port Charles devours rumors faster than truth, the story begins to feed itself. The thing about a fake relationship is that it demands the same upkeep as a real one. The texts, the microgestures, the willingness to be seen when it's inconvenient and to disappear when it's essential. Michael and Jacinda start rehearsing the ease of two people who've been orbiting each other for months. Inside jokes that never happened, memories that didn't exist last week but must feel lived in by Friday. They coordinate the job transition so their professional lives plausibly overlap. Meetings scheduled just long enough to place them on the same floor, a transfer request that just happened to be approved, a paper trail that looks reluctant rather than engineered. The longer they do it, the more natural it becomes, and that's the trap. They're playing a role designed to convince a judge and a jury, and it's working a little too well on them, too. Michael, who has always calculated risk like a second language, recognizes that the heat around him isn't just about the incident, it's about proximity to people the town won't stop talking about. GH fans know Willow Tate has been charged with attempted murder against Drew Kane, which means every hairline crack in the larger story will be pried open with a crowbar. A jury can hate you for the wrong reasons as easily as love you for the right ones, and Michael can feel that unpredictable tide turning. He needs to harden his version of events until there's no wiggle room left. That's when fake has to look indistinguishable from forever. Not because he's reckless, but because the DA's office is relentless. If they can show he lied about where he was, or who he was with, everything else he touches gets recast as deception. Jacinda understands the stakes. She also understands optics. She plants the seeds where they'll grow into something robust. A tagged photo here, a comment from a friend there, a mutual playlist that dates back months. She calls in favors without leaving fingerprints. An old coworker who remembers spotting them together at a coffee shop weeks earlier, a hostess who thinks they celebrated a small win on a Tuesday. It's not fabrication so much as curation, stringing together plausible moments until they read as a life. The more resistance they encounter, the faster they move. If doubters start whispering, you flood the zone with proof of how ordinary, but undeniable, this love story is. Of course, there are objections, and they're getting louder. Family doesn't love a crisis manager, family loves a confession. Jocelyn can smell something off and labels it for what it is, too neat. Dante hates coincidences and will methodically walk back the timeline until something slips. Carly knows when a smile is theater and when it isn't, and she sees the static sparking between Michael and Jacinda even if neither of them says it out loud. Alexis, laser-focused on Willow's defense, doesn't have the luxury of sentiment. She'll push for whatever testimony protects her client, and if that means grinding Michael's new romance under the heel of cross-examination, so be it. The DA's office clocks Jacinda's transfer and circles it in red. Internal Affairs hates any shift that looks like pressure or quid pro quo. No one is asleep at the switch. That's why a proposal moves from wildcard to chess move. Michael can rationalize it 6 different ways. It consolidates the narrative. It signals certainty. It dares the town to call a bluff no one can quite prove is a bluff. And yes, it opens the door to legal protections that can complicate compelled testimony, even if those protections come with exceptions large enough to drive a transport van through. Prosecutors will scream, sham, but sham marriages are hard to litigate when 2 people are convincingly besotted and the receipts, digital and otherwise, say they've been on a collision course for a while. A ring isn't just jewelry here, it's a firewall. The engagement party becomes a stage-managed timeline exhibit, speeches that establish, when we knew, photos that anchor dates, witnesses who swear they saw this coming long before the rest of Port Charles caught up. The risk is that somewhere along the line, it stops being a calculation. Because the kiss that seals the plan becomes the kiss that lingers in empty rooms, and the hand you hold for show is the one that steadies you when the floor drops out. Jacinda, who promised herself she'd never fall for the mission, starts to soften at the edges. Less because of the pressure and more because Michael's worst days are sincere, and sincerity is her fatal flaw. Michael keeps telling himself that he's pushing this because it's smart, not because it feels good. But he's sleeping better when Jacinda's on the other side of the couch. He's sharper when she's in the room. He's calmer in a crisis because her presence keeps chaos from metastasizing. That's not part of the plan. That's the plan going sentient. Meanwhile, every victory births a new vulnerability. A random fan catches them in a candid moment that looks too perfect and it goes viral. Perfect is suspicious. An old text thread resurfaces with timestamps that don't line up cleanly unless you squint. A gift receipt for the ring leaks, and the date isn't quite as ideal as the story suggests. The DA's office will frame all of it as a performance, a coordinated alibi built on romance as prop. Defense will call it a private relationship forced into public view, as innocent couples often are when the town demands an explanation for why 2 people chose each other. The jury, as always, will be 12 strangers with opinions they carried in from their own lives. Layered on top of that is the Drew Willow storm system, which refuses to drift out to sea. Just because Willow is charged doesn't mean Michael is in the clear, he's not. Every move he makes could be read as an attempt to misdirect, to shield, to control the narrative in a way that protects more than himself. That's why the proposal, if it comes, has to thread an impossible needle. Earnest enough to look like truth, strategic enough to function as armor, and timed in such a way that no one can claim its obstruction by another name. If he does it, he'll do it in plain sight, no secret ceremony, no courthouse sprint, because clandestine equals guilty in this town's imagination. He'll do it with witnesses, with phones raised, with a paper trail so pristine it looks messy. He may even buy the kiss after the kiss, lean into the fairy tale because once you've sold Act 1, the audience expects Act 2. Along the way, they'll have to carry the weight of consequences no one can unspool in advance. Spousal privilege might complicate subpoenas, but it won't save anyone from a conspiracy charge if the state can suggest the romance furthered a crime. Our audits will crawl through Jacinda's transfer. Ia will map every handshake and hallway glance to see if influence colored process. Friends will choose sides badly, breaking things they didn't mean to break. There will be a night, there is always a night, when Michael sits across from Jacinda and admits, not with words but with exhaustion, that he can't tell where the lie ends and the life begins. And Jacinda, who never wanted to be anyone's unfinished sentence, will realize the only way out of this is either all the way through or all the way apart. So does he propose? The momentum says yes. The logic says he has to, both to reinforce the alibi and to stake a claim on a future that might exist whether or not the courthouse ever believes it. He'll pick a venue with built-in witnesses, a place that can't be accused of retroactive staging because it's too public and too imprecise. He'll talk about fate because fate photographs well. He'll make sure the ring had a life before the engagement, that the jeweler remembers his first visit, that a friend, accidentally, asked him weeks ago if he was ready. He'll invite scrutiny by the gallon and count on the fact that most people stop looking when the picture is pretty enough. And yet, for all the schematics and scaffolding, the story you're really telling is simpler. Two people who agreed to pretend because survival demanded it, then discovered the only honest part of the whole production was how they felt when no one was watching. The longer they keep this state alive, the more likely it is that Jacinda stops guarding her edges and lets a real romance into the room. The same goes for Michael, who started this as an ask and now finds that the answer, unexpected, terrifying, undeniable, might actually work in his favor in court and in his life. That duality is why Port Charles will never look away. Is this a merger or a marriage? A legal tactic or a love story? A mask they wear to beat the system or a mirror that finally shows them who they are? What's certain is that complications will multiply. Skeptics will double down. Evidence will be read 12 different ways. And still, Michael and Jacinda will keep walking into rooms together, daring the town to pick a lane. If the proposal comes, it won't be a twist, it'll be the next logical step in a narrative that started as a fix and evolved into a future. Will it save them? Or will the very thing that makes their story persuasive, its precision, its timing, its uncanny fit, be the detail that convinces a jury it was engineered from the start? General Hospital spoilers promise that whatever they choose, the emotions will be messy, the fallout will be fierce, and the updates won't stop coming, because in Port Charles, love is never just a feeling. It's evidence. It's motive. It's the scene of the crime.